Hi, let's do a deep dive of my new plugin Coastline and take a look at its engine called Tide. Tide is an additive resynthesizer. It detects the frequencies in a signal and it maps an oscillator to each one. The typical result is a sort of distilled version of the input, which is recognizable, but pretty basic and pretty moldable. Let's make a recording and just hear how Tide sounds. We can hear a lot of the same frequencies as the original source, but it's much more simplified and kind of just clarified to its core frequencies. The first thing that we can play around with here is the number of partials. We can make our output very basic and just hear the fundamental frequency and a couple of prominent frequencies. Or we can go all the way up to 25 partials and start hearing all of the harmonics in this signal. We never really achieve the original signal, but we can control how much of it we're really kind of restoring here. The next thing is the wave shape of these partials. By default, we're going to hear sine waves, one for each of these frequencies. So the oscillators are just kind of representing the original frequencies, and they're not really doing anything on top of that. However, we could morph the wave shape towards a saw, or we can take those sine waves and we can wave fold them. Now, each of these harmonics and each of these frequencies is contributing its own harmonics on top of this. You can see the effects of the wave shaping on this oscilloscope up here. From here, we can decide which frequencies we actually want to hear. In ebb mode, we can control the proportion of the partials, and we can select which ones are heard. Tide is going to detect which partials seem to be harmonically relevant to each other, and we can turn the proportion of those partials up or down with this harmonics knob. If we turn it up, we're just going to hear the partials that have some kind of harmonic relevance. This is a nice effect if you just kind of want to make the output of Coastline really, pleasant, kind of just mirroring the original sound in really its purest form. This is kind of the core musicality or the fundamental frequencies in your signal. But if we turn harmonics down, we can alternatively try to target the inharmonic frequencies. These are going to be the frequencies that really give us the character and the timbre of our signal. We can hear these frequencies that we might not have really noticed, but they contribute to that sound and really bring something unique to it. So it can be really nice to play around with kind of how much you want the sound to just really mirror the input and just be this really distilled version of it, or if you want to celebrate the weirder parts of it. Another similar control is called offset. This is basically going to shift the set of frequencies that we hear by masking out the loudest frequencies. When we talk about the offset being 0 or 1 or 2, we're talking about how many strong frequencies are we kind of removing from the signal. So I'm going to turn down the number of partials a bit so we really hear this effect. And as we turn offset up, we are going to remove kind of the most significant frequencies one by one. And this is really interesting because we're hearing the same set of frequencies for the most part, but they take on a really different context once we take out the fundamental frequency and the most recognizable ones. It's kind of like hearing a drum beat without the snare drum. You can still kind of follow along and hear the logic in it, but you're kind of missing the thing that gives everything context. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to modulate offset in some sort of repeatable way, such as with the LFO. And I think this can have some really interesting effects. This can kind of almost create these like chord progressions as we're bringing in each of these frequencies one by one and restoring them in the hierarchy. I think this can be a really fun effect. Tide also has a second mode, which is called flow. In this mode, we basically detect the actual notes played in a signal, and we're going to generate a harmonic series of oscillators for each note. This can be nice if you want Tide to kind of take a step forward and be a bit more pronounced relative to the input signal. It kind of gives Tide its own voice as opposed to just really mirroring the input signal. The partials control is going to change how broad the harmonic series is, from just one note, which is the fundamental frequency, all the way up to 25. So in this mode, the number of partials is almost like a brightness control. We're almost like filtering and unfiltering the signal. From there, we have this chroma control, which is going to shift the balance of the harmonic series. It's sort of like a formant filter, where when we speak or sing, we are producing harmonics, but the vowels that we vocalize are changing the proportion of those harmonics. So, if I turn the partials back up and then change chroma, we're going to hear some pretty obvious effects really quickly. To the left, we're going to have more darker and just rounder sounds. And to the right, we're going to have brighter, maybe a little harsher sounds. You should keep in mind that the effect of chroma is going to be relatively dependent on how many partials you're using. So with certain settings, you might not hear as strong of an effect. But if we turn this up, we can really hear how it affects the whole harmonic series. So one of the things I like to do is just putting a slow jitter on the chroma setting, just to change it a bit over time. It just kind of moves everything around in a pretty fun way. And you can decide kind of where the kind of home base is going to be, if you want it to be a little darker overall, or if you want it to be pretty bright overall. Okay, so that's the tide control. And I think the TLDR is that the ebb mode is going to be where you're kind of resynthesizing the input and deciding what parts of it you really want to hone in on and kind of, you know, reshape or reimagine. And flow is where tide kind of takes on its own voice and creates something really complementary to whatever you feed it. So you can decide between which mode, kind of how you want Coastline to function. Is it kind of doing something completely complementary and based on the input, or is it kind of taking a step forward and contributing its own voice to the equation? So I hope you have fun with that, and check in next time for all the rest of the deep dives for these engines and effects. Take care.